California Creative Courts Upstate region, Colusa County. Experiences related to health are often determined by factors beyond the individual, such as environment, policy, or culture. The arts have a critical and accessible role to play in tackling community conditions. What do you think?
So what do you think? Is that like obvious? Do you agree with that?
I think it's not obvious, but yes, I agree with it.
So in other words, you agree with it, but you're not quite sure why.
Yeah, or I know why I agree with it. I would think that most people wouldn't see the connection between art and happiness and contentedness.
So literally you've just put your finger on why this project matters, because we are going to create public awareness campaigns that place artists at the forefront of issues that are critical to society. So it's all about creating awareness at a very fragile time. Before we go any further, I would be so grateful if you would give a land acknowledgement. We always start this way, and it's super that you're with us.
Thank you. I'll just like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we're on. That was historically a part of the Wintu Nation. Here in Colusa, we have the Cutchel-Behe Band of Wintu Indians, as well as the Cletzel-Behe Band of Wintu Indians, which were both Patwin, the River Patwin and the Squirrel Patwin.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And it's we find more and more that you can't just share one standardized map and expect it to tell you who the first peoples of a place were. Increasingly, we draw upon the communities that we visit to tell us who your first peoples are. So we're very grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Eliza. I appreciate that.
Of course. So what is the California Creative Corps? It's an economic and workforce recovery pilot program intended to fuel positivity, regain public trust, and inspire health and safety across California's diverse populations. Why regain public trust? This kind of foxes me every time. Think about the idea that we're just coming through a global pandemic. Within the pandemic, there was such distress across all parts of society. We lost friends and family. We were distanced from friends and family. We were distanced from our colleagues at work. Some people wanted to wear masks. Some people didn't. The whole thing was politicized. It was a very, very distraught period. In much the same way as a very well-known program called the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, was created on the heels of the Great Recession in the mid-1930s. This program mirrors that attempt to fuel public trust again. So what we want to do is place artists in service to society. We want them to grow capacity through partnering with organizations that are doing vital work, such as yours in this room, and inspire public trust again. So the California Arts Council has given us 4 key areas of work. And it's saying just stick to these areas if you can, but then challenge us if you feel that within your communities there's something that's missing here, but which is critical to society. So the 4 areas are public awareness related to water and energy conservation, climate mitigation and emergency preparedness and relief, and disaster response. So we already know, just talking to Joelle, that your community was very much affected by a fire that took place miles away in Paradise. It changed your landscape in terms of who's living here, who's contributing to society, who's in need, etc., etc. So all these are clues. Civic engagement, social justice and community engagement, and of course, public health awareness. We're going to be sharing a tool which the state has handed down to us, which you might find helpful in understanding the makeup of Colusa County in terms of how this map, the Healthy Places Index, is sizing you up compared to other communities across California. But first, let's look at this map. This map shows how California Arts Council which is now in receipt of close to $60 million in workforce recovery funds from the state, decided to divvy up the administration of those funds across California. So you can see that where the yellow area, we're the single largest geographic region within the state with 19 counties. The next one down is the Central Valley region with 11 counties, I think. And you can see the more populated the areas, the fewer counties there are that are administering the same amount of funds. So what does that tell you? We have a huge amount of work to do covering this vastly diverse geographic region. And one of the ways that we're doing is working with our county arts agencies. We're a county arts council. David represents and Abby represent UBISOT Arts and Culture. And we have folks from Colusa County Arts Council. So all of us are going to be resources for you. And all of us are going to help work together and make sure that communities are benefiting from these monies. There are many ways of looking at a map, an area. The map on the left shows us the way that California Arts Council, the state of California is seeing the economic regions within California at the moment in connection with a very important fund. I think it's $600 million in workforce development funds through the California Economic Resiliency Fund. It's an enormous amount of money, and we're part of the North State. And the reason we show this map is that if any of you have any connection with anyone doing work in this area, the intersection of arts and the economy, for example, you might want to connect in with your local representative for SERF, the California Economic Resiliency Fund. And then, of course, we have our tribal lands and the linguistic connections that connect our First Peoples. The map on the bottom shows our watersheds. We know that water is incredibly important for you here in Colusa. And we know it's probably a contentious issue. There's probably a fabulous project or two that could be connected with water scarcity, for example, almost an environmental justice type project with artists and the right people to work with. So be thinking of that. The map on the right simply shows the way communities connect together through transport and trade routes. I like this map because it kind of indicates where the mountain ranges are, as well as the rivers, as well as the roads, etc. So it's an excellent planning tool. So 19 counties in all, but only 31, and so 31% of the geography, but only 4.2% of the population. 3 primary hydraulic regions or watersheds, incredible precipitation variances, same with elevation, and then a mixed economy, as you might expect: agriculture, timber, ocean fisheries, mining, tourism, energy. Again, you're going to be receiving this PowerPoint afterwards, and it's designed to just trigger ideas and trigger the thinking in terms of possible partnerships and possible themes for those partnerships. We've talked about that already. So yes, we're introducing a new tool that the state has given us. You're going to hate us for doing this to you. Take it with a grain of salt. We know that data that we're going to share with you today feels so prescribed that you won't necessarily be able to relate to it through your heart, if you like. It may not relate to your lived experience of this place that you call home. So we want you to challenge us as well. Are you still here? Katrina, are you still with us? Because if you'd like to talk to this slide, it would be great.
Yes, I am here. You're on the regional one. I was just pulling up my own PowerPoint in case to keep up with you.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, most of all, and as I said, I'm sorry I'm not there, but luckily I've had the pleasure of spending time in Colusa in my world when I worked as a water resource person. But as we come in, as we come in here to this county with looking at 19 different counties, we just try to understand some basics. So again, this is an area where you can give us any feedback. This is just our attempt to look at both the geography of the area, the primary watersheds and understanding their connections and how you might connect with other counties because of those relationships with those watersheds, the public lands. And we look at that especially because in some areas, there's such a high percentage of public lands, and that deeply impacts the tax bases and tax revenue for areas. College and universities helps us understand when you see the indices for the Healthy Places Index, one has to do with pursuing a bachelor's degree. So this helps us understand, do kids have to leave the community to actually attend college, or what are their options? Understanding that tribal lands is as well there. This was one, definitely please let us know, exactly, is that one rancheria? Are there multiple? It wasn't really clear in my research. And then the county resource groups has been super useful, not only in thinking about who to reach out for these listening tours, but even more so, we're really seeing that huge resource of artists being linked up with people that are directly working on the issues. So this one's the interactive one here with Eliza, where you get to help tell us who are the different groups that are involved with the key issues in Colusa.
So I'm not sure that we captured your two. I keep looking at you. Sorry, you've become my focus. I don't want to make it feel uncomfortable for you. But let's talk for a moment about, in terms of that community resource groups, tell us what should be on there, because remember, these are going to be triggers for artists to choose who to work with as well. So we want to, share with us anything that's missing from this list.
I would think the CAPC, the Colusa County Child Abuse Prevention Program.
Okay.
And maybe First Five, they're pretty active in our community.
Great.
Two agencies.
And can you remind us, did you capture those two?
Yeah.
Great. And then can you remind us your affiliation again?
And I work for California Tribal TANF Partnership, and we're a social services agency that provides temporary assistance for needy families of Native American descent. And we have, it's really interesting to me because we have 17 different sites located all across Northern California and into the upper part of Central California as well.
This is fantastic. So it's a regional support system. And we'll be saying this to you time and time again. You might have projects, whether you're an artist, an arts organization, or a social service organization, or a unit of government. You might have projects that are specific, winning projects that are specific to Colusa, to a city, for example, or to a township or an underrepresented area or peoples here. But you might also have a regional idea, which would be very exciting. I just wanted to welcome two people who were in the room, who weren't in the room at the beginning. Would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Bonnie Gross, and I just popped in. I work in education, and Jim thought that maybe it might be great for me to share some ideas of how we can support our education in America.
Fantastic. And so what we might do is turn it back to you and say, come on, give us some ideas for intergenerational learning projects that could be funded. Excellent. So don't give them away.
You took me when it's done for free.
Fantastic. Well, let's make sure we collect your, where is the email list?
She's kind.
Oh, perfect. You're totally on it.
We have another person that just.
Yes, and hello to you at the back.
We're so excited representing my group, so I just came because I had another meeting in about a month.
Oh, wonderful. Well, would you like to share, is there a particular affiliation that you would like us to know about?
Same as well, at Stage Hands.
Oh, okay, great. Well, wonderful. Okay, good. So yes, back to this list. Anything else right now that anyone in the room can tell us?
I basically have a question for Sharon.
Yep.
The Colusa County Arts Council, well, maybe she can answer. The Colusa County Chamber of Commerce used to be also considered the Colusa County Economic Development Corporation.
I see.
So I don't know if that's
A separation now or a distinct other entity.
Well, We don't have a economic development corporation, so
It might be a function that perhaps the county of Colusa fulfills, do you think now?
The city of Colusa is doing most of it.
City of Colusa, okay. And then that absorbs important monies like TOT or whatever.
You just got the Live Amp grant.
Yeah,
um,
good to know.
Towns for our city, and, yeah, she does a lot of, they have a grant writer specifically to go out and find this.
See, that's fabulous. See, it's flushing these things out that's so important. Like our county, in this case, it's the city, but in our county, there's a grant writer. And they're always sending me emails saying, have you heard about this grant? And I say, yes, do you want to help me write it? You know.
Yeah,
How many grants can a poor girl write?
yeah.
What's you good?
Were redevelopment funds here in Colusa before? Let's say 7 years ago, redevelopment funds.
Yes.
yeah.
Because they were cut out of the government by the time, so. now
Yeah.
they're making terrible things.
But you can see where we're going. The more we know about that we can then share back with you, the more it will trigger ideas later when we're not here. So
We might want to lose the Arbuckle downtown revitalization.
excellent. The Arbuckle downtown revitalization something.
Yeah.
Okay, we can
Yeah.
Google it.
I think
Whatever.
it's revitalization. There you go.
We're all confounding each other.
Recall what their name is.
Okay, yeah. So this is good, and we can connect later, Sharon, and we can like think up some more before we send the final version back to you.
That's a great one.
Yeah,
They do a lot.
Yeah.
cool, brilliant. And sometimes the smallest agencies, as we know, the least funded agencies are doing the best work ever. And so a grant like this, with all their knowledge, I have no idea what this means. Oh, I haven't connected yet with them. I should be okay. You know, do the greatest work. So it might be an opportunity for those smaller agencies to sort of rise up and flourish through a grant like this if they're working with the right artists. So here we go. This is a historical map. It shows 100 years of fire within California. And it tells us, if you look at the history of fire, that fires are getting bigger and more catastrophic, much harder to manage. And at last, we're seeing that, and this is probably more relevant to forested communities than to you, but forest management starts to become a very important issue, which could become, you know, a very important proposal for artists to work on. But so this is fire, and this particular is Colusa's county fire history. And I'm going to move quickly on to the next slide, and then Katrina, if you're still with us, if you want to talk to that, we're on the slide that says Colusa County recent fire history.
Yeah, this and the other, it was interesting because obviously in the areas that have the more forested areas, we all understand the risks and how the fires are getting bigger. And you were all quite impacted in parts of your county, of course, by the Mendocino complex fire. But I was surprised as I did my research to learn about the fire you just had, right, in May, that was threatening the town of Colusa. And was quite a surprise. And I saw the article about the fire NATOs and everything. So it's also just looking overall that our whole sense of fire and what might happen is changing over time. And it's our job to look at, okay, given the changing climate, given the dry earth, given this whole different nature that fires might happen in May and December, where are we going? What can we do? Where do we want to be in 50 years? How can we convey that? How can we demonstrate that potential and maybe even get people excited about where we're going? But in the very least, reduce our vulnerability to fire. So it just seems like a very big topic throughout, of course, the entire upstate region, and important for all the counties. I mean, Colusa, you're right there next to Lake County, and they are severely impacted by fire. So, and you are as well in that part of your region. So just really thinking about regional approaches to these issues that affect everyone and do not obey county lines.
And of course, getting ahead of the curve, which is really what Katrina was referring to. And then, of course, you can't talk about fire without talking about water. Do you want to speak to this, Katrina, Mrs. Water Scientist person?
Well, and this is a picture that's of no surprise up in Shasta Reservoir. I tend not to call it a lake only because it was originally a river, but that's my own little thing. But it has deeply, deeply impacted Colusa, of course, and all the Central Valley counties with the change in how much flow you're seeing. So this is really for you to share more of those details with us, and then really thinking about, okay, given this changing resource availability, again, what can artists do to look at where we're going in 50 years and what are, how we can minimize the impacts to Colusa County.
Yeah. And I'm just showing you a gorgeous slide of the Pacific Flyway and the Colusa National Wildlife Refuge.
I know, isn't that fun? I didn't have permission for the photo, so don't tattle on me, okay?
We're going to make it public. We've already called in the who. But yeah, just little things that you already know. I mean, it's so clear driving in, just as it was when we approached Marysville from Nevada City. It's just so devastatingly beautiful seeing these incredible areas, these rice paddies that are filled with water, knowing that we're looking at migration, massive patterns of wildlife migration routes and things affect your regions and create incredible sense of place and pride. What kind of understanding that one of the program elements that California Arts Council is encouraging artists to get behind is climate mitigation. How do some of these things that water scarcity, for example, how will it affect the Pacific Flyway and the Colusa National Wildlife Refuge? So just thinking about all these things. Within the Healthy Places Index, in every area of every part of Colusa, you'll be able to find the racial and ethnic makeup of that particular area. Now, the map shows us by census. It's the default view for the tool is by census. And so you can really burrow into it. So the overall picture for Colusa County shows that you're way over half your population is Hispanic or Latino. Surely that means that some fabulous program that can be developed in relation to and about and in service to working with the Latino population. So we just throw that out as well. All these things, consider them, because we for sure, when we're looking at grants to fund, will want to know that you're taking those into account. And this is it. That's what the map looks like. So this is the Healthy Places Index by the Public Health Alliance of Southern California. This is a map that's being adopted by grantors, sources of funding, and analysts in local government across the United States now. It's really taken off, but it comes from California. You can see two colors, green and blue, dark green, light green, dark blue, light blue. Which areas of California do you think are the most healthy? What color? Green, dark green. And why? Why do you think they're more healthy?
What do you mean by healthy? Do you mean the environment or the actual people are healthy?
So they're related. So the California, and we're going to be moving on to this in a moment. So the California Healthy Places Index looks at the relative health of communities across California. So it's what you're seeing is bundles of census tracts, and the way this particular index measures the relative health. So for me, when I think of those dark green areas, they're usually metropolitan areas or perhaps major thoroughfares. So you're looking at access to resources, greater individual community wealth, a fairer distribution perhaps of resources or not. It's all relative. The pale green bit that goes up, you see it starts in San Francisco and then wanders up all the way to Lake Tahoe. That's the I-80 corridor. So it's very interesting. You're looking at retail density, hospitals, schools, dotted along. And so pretty soon you begin to get a picture of what they're measuring when they think about healthy communities, access to resources and other factors. So the upshot is that upstate California, the piece of this map that we're administering funds for, doesn't look that great. It's like lots of dark blue, lots of light blue, which means that what we're going to be doing is aiming to fund projects that come from those very dark blue areas, otherwise known as being in the lowest quartile of the Healthy Places Index. We will be making exceptions if you can make your case. An example would be, you see how there are some stripy areas? Those stripy areas, the pale gray and white areas, are called exclusion zones. And that's where the Public Health Alliance of Southern California haven't been able to haven't felt that it was safe to draw conclusions from and correlations from, because the population is too low. So anything up where there's a population under 1,500 is tagged an exclusion zone. It doesn't mean that there isn't a good reason for creating a project. So don't let that put you off. Katrina, why census tracts?
Well, we want to be able to compare data without the boundaries changing so that we at least have a relatively consistent factor. And census tracts are delineated by, these permanent features such as roads and waterways. So the only way they really change is if population grows quite a bit, they might be divided into two, or if it reduces, they might merge two census tracts. But other than that, the boundaries stay consistent.
Brilliant. And so if you borrow down, these are the ways in which the Healthy Places Index measures health. It looks at economic factors, education, social factors, transportation, neighborhood, housing, clean environment, healthcare access. And you see where those little black lines tell you where on the Healthy Places Index you are in Colusa. So we can see there's something going on with education, isn't there? That means you probably have a strong case for support to create a project around education. Same with transportation, same with neighborhood, same with healthcare access. So again, what are these measuring in themselves? So we've provided this screen, not because we're going to go into massive detail with it now, but really as a sort of training 101, so that when you come back to it later, you'll be able to see at a glance what it is that they're measuring.
And another reason Eliza is showing that is just she's been so great at articulating as we've gone through these communities, the challenge before you, because these are indicators that were come up from a group in Southern California. And that's not to say that they didn't do their due diligence about rural communities, but we're certainly finding there's some factors that really don't apply to the spaces we live in. So again, for all of us, what determines healthy living where we are? And please do let us know, because we're going to give them feedback after these observations. We're on county number 17 now, right? So yeah.
Do you want to speak to this next one, since you're the data node?
Yeah, well, so this one is really a summary of Colusa County as a whole. So know that when you go into individual tracts, usually that tells us a lot more. But here's what's really interesting about Colusa County. There are some areas where the different tracts differ, but on the most part, there's quite a consistency between the county averages and the tract averages. We've looked at some areas where the disparity in per capita income has gone from, I don't know, I should know this by heart at this point, but the under $20,000 and up to, it was either 80 or 90, like in Placer County. I mean, a huge difference between tracts. And so here there's much more similarity. The thing that stands out, unlike any other of the 19 counties in the upstate region, so far that we've summarized here, and I think we only have one left, so I think we're safe to say it's the highest, the racial, the Latino being 59.4% as an average percentage, Latino Hispanic for Colusa, with a maximum of 74.5% in tract 3. So that was quite stood out. Education scores were the ones that they're lowest for the county. So we looked at those, and healthcare access. So we want to understand more of those. But I will say housing was incredible scores, and same with economic, much higher than we've seen in other areas of the upstate region.
Thanks so much. We can, if you like, we can go in. I'm very keen to get to the bit where we truly are listening to you, not just talking to you. I can go in and give you a live demonstration now of the map, and you could burrow into some of the areas that you feel through your lived experience of being here are vulnerable areas, or you can just do it yourselves later and we can just start talking right away. What would you like to do?
I feel like we all kind of know our county.
You know exactly where it's a low economic and low education areas are.
So let me challenge you gently.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me, we're going to go into that healthy places index, and we're going to just go. Here it is. This is what it looks like when you go in, and I'm going to just literally spend a couple of minutes on this, and you're going to tell me where to go. So here it is. It's going to load slowly. I'm going to zoom in. I frequently
I will share that I did notice some things that I haven't seen in any other of my the tracks I've looked at, and I'm sure there's local knowledge, and I'd be really interested to understand.
Very good. Well, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, well, like for instance, in track 4, the county average for employment is 64.3 percentile. So that means it has I mean, it's easier with a number. Let me just say that track 4 has an employment healthy places index value of 5.2 percentile. So that means there's 5.2% of tracks that have a lower score than this track does. And conversely, almost 95% have a better score. And so seen for track 4 an employment of 5.2 with the county average at 64.3, then of course that's a flag. Something's going on here. Why is it so low in employment? But on the same time, it has quite a high, the highest county per capita income. And I haven't seen that kind of trend before. Usually it's sort of across the board, some of the employment indices. So I was just really curious what you all think that might be about.
So this is Stony Ford and
Yeah, ranchers, there's a lot of ranchers up there.
small population.
Small population.
It's pretty remote.
So you see, these
It
are
also looks like it includes a lot of ag area in the North County that has.
It's very rural and hard to get to.
so you think it could be like in England, we say it's like a red herring. It feels like that's a really important thing, and it's a red flag or a dark blue flag, but in fact, it's nothing. You see, this is great. This is where your
Well,
experience.
that's Mendocino was.
Right.
That's what those people encountered that employed. So they're working, they're enrolled, would not say they're employed. Yeah.
So do you think undocumented populations?
Not
No,
many, not very many.
Okay, so when I say these things, it's because I'm intentionally trying to uncover an issue that we could grapple with. Does that make sense? So,
Can you zoom in a little bit more on the map so we can see like
What areas are? Okay.
So we make sure that we're reading.
absolutely.
It's including Princeton.
I can't exactly see on the map what it's.
Maxwell,
Maxwell,
and then there's a little road that goes up. I mean, there's barely, you can see the mountains are rising up there.
That's very forested, very curvy road, hard to get to.
I assume this area has a lot in common with some of the Humboldt tracks we saw. And
Yeah.
it doesn't include Snow Mountain?
No,
Does it?
Ladoga, it is.
Yeah, Ladoga, Snow Mountain, it's all up there.
So it's the highest elevation in.
Yeah. Yeah,
Interesting.
that's a very forested area. Anything, but-
I can't wait to feed all this back to the California Arts Council. We've already had initial conversations with the California Arts Council on how it can be deeply misleading because of the rationale and the indices used were developed with urban populations in mind. So the reason we share this is that since we're expected to report back on it in terms of projects, we want you to challenge it. You know, don't take it as read and don't despair. So fundamentally, if you think about those, the symbolism of blue, light blue versus dark blue, much of Colusa is light blue. So it's neither healthy nor sharing the worst outlook of all. So what you want to do is burrow down within the light blue and find out where it's being dragged down and see if there are real issues. Is there anywhere else you want me to look at before we go out of it?
There's a lot of agriculture in that area. There's also the development
Refuge.
wildlife refuge.
Yeah.
That comes down into that area.
I'm interested to see where, if there's, does it show the concentration of, like, what kind of markers are there for education? Because I know that we're
Tell me which part of Colusa you'd like to look at.
Williams.
Williams, okay. Is that, oh yeah, here we go. So this is census tract 3, Katrina. I'm opening this up now. It's been a bit slow to load on my.
You know, Williams is a very famous resident. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah. We know.
We're all-
Now track 3,
Yeah.
track 3, it's going to be interesting because I'm glad you asked about education, because my big flag I put was it had a really high score for education, 50.4, while the county score was only 8.9. And this is the same one that's the Hispanic Latino population of 74.5%.
So Williams has a higher percentage of education. Is that what you're saying? They're
Good
Higher
education
score.
outcomes.
Williams does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
But
has a higher, much higher score than the county. As Eliza opens that up, you'll be able to see it compared to the county.
And is there an ethnic correlation between the high scores and low scores? Which we often see throughout the state.
That's a great question, because I think that would be the assumption,
Yeah.
Certainly the state patterns.
And it might also be,
but that number might blow that assumption out of the water.
teacher per student. Up there.
And again, remember this census tract is quite large. So you've got Williams in there, over there. But then there's this whole other area it's measuring as well.
But again, you can't see that at this immediately on here. Maybe you can, but the education for the county score was 8.9 percentile. So this one's doing so
Yeah.
much better than the county overall.
It does, and I wonder, does that correlate with preschool enrollment? Because I saw Colusa's number was 25 and what preschool enrollment in Williams is 69.
So here's what you can do. At the moment, I have my, I've landed on tract 3.
Okay,
And it's looking at education. So what you can do is then click on any other and compare the education with this tract, with this
interesting.
tract. Does
Yeah.
that make sense? You can
Yeah.
clear them too.
And also be sure that it's measuring what we think it's measuring. It's measuring percentage of people that have BA as opposed to measuring school test scores though.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah. I want to log in and I'll share with.
Yeah, my internet's so slow because I'm not really on the, that would be great. Yeah, sorry, we need to do this. but
It's CCAC 5.
it's not coming back.
Go to other networks.
Yeah, great. Which one is it?
CAC, keep going down. 5. Maybe try the 2.4.
Should I try this? Should I do that one?
Try that one.
Okay,
They're both the same.
and then you're gonna share the password. Fabulous. And then it won't take so interminably.
Oh, I'm on the different ones, so I can't share.
It's all the same.
I do want to flag while she's doing that, another area that I have not been able to really dissect, but I'm curious about some of these values. I think because these tracts do have smaller populations in general, there's a way they score high school enrollment that seems to be almost their percentiles don't feel really as representative. It seems to be based on something, because you see a lot of scores that end up at 63%. So they're doing some kind of metric. So again, yours, I think seeing that these are indices that are measuring health, and knowing you probably have access to a lot more accurate information as well, specific to these different tracks, just feel bolstered by what you know from your educator friends and other trends you've seen.
You know, I have a little sense of that, Katrina. I think they're using what they call a cohort group. So this high school graduation, for example, ninth grade starts, and they're looking at across the board the 4 years. Even if you leave the state, if you register another school, they don't count as a dropout. But if you leave the state and you forget to call, and they don't know where you are, you get registered as a dropout, and the students are taking the hit for that. That's hard.
So you wanted to know how to go between policy action areas or markers for health, county to county. So you can see I'm in education, I'm in track 3. If I wanted to compare track 3 with track 4, I remember what it's telling me about education. I just click on the other tracks.
Can we see
There
class
you go.
2?
There's another example too, that Princeton, although it's.
Which one?
Colusa County
Two.
is lumped in
Class-
with Glenn
class two.
County School District.
Yeah, 36. And then what was 3 again?
There you go. And there's 3.
High school, preschool enrollment is 14.7.
So in other words, if you're thinking education is what we want to focus on for Colusa, find the track that has the lowest overall health scoring. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it'll strengthen your case.
Okay.
Have we,
2 is the lowest. No, I don't think so. What is it? 30?
and then you have,
That was 5.
what's going on here with this, it's,
It's
That's, yeah.
it's unpopulated. There's not, it's like agriculture.
I see.
Yeah, and then
Okay.
I see, and that's over in Union County, close to Union County.
Okay,
And there's a small section of that, the non-tracked section.
yeah,
That is in the center.
I see. Yeah,
Your track 1, 2, and 3 all have over 5,000 people of population. And both
Okay.
track 4 and 5 are in the 2,200 to 2,500. So they are smaller, quite a bit smaller than the other tracks.
yeah.
What is Gridley?
So have we had enough of the healthy places index?
Please.
Exactly.
But we can just log into that, right?
Yeah.
It's so.
Yeah.
Index.
Yeah. And we'll follow up with you. We've got all our counties have got a big email coming to them next week. What we're doing is we're just sorting through all our Zoom recordings, because we're recording this now too. And all our film recordings, we'll be editing them down, but we're going to be sharing with you, next steps soon. So let's move on. So when we
I
think,
have a question.
yeah,
When you
please.
talk about education, you're talking about stuff, grammar school education or overall education?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned education in general. So California Arts Council already have a slew of education programs. So what we don't want to do with this is to just create a project that one of those other programs can fund, right? Because why wouldn't you just apply directly for an education? Plus, don't forget Prop 28 has just been passed. It's a seismic generational prop that's going to, pump. How many billion is it? Billion or something? It's just unbelievable amount of money into schools, and there isn't that much information about how that's going to roll out yet. But what you want to be doing is buddying up with local school districts now to say, that they know that this is coming down, that and if you want to position yourself to do a project because you think you can serve, they will be looking for support when the moment comes. So it's great to know. So when we think about education, maybe another way, a different way of thinking about education and the needs of our kids is to think of intergenerational learning. What could a project that isn't necessarily curriculum bound or in the classroom or aligned to academic standards, what might that look like in Colusa? You know, what valuable wisdom could be shared between communities with our young? Think of it in a different way, perhaps.
The reason I asked that is, I don't know how exactly you're looking at Williams, but Williams basically has become a bedroom community for the Bay Area. And there are a lot of people there that are educated, but don't really care about Williams. They care about their community, they care about their work. They come home, they sleep, they get up and go back to the area. Also, in Williams, this doesn't have anything to do with anything, but Williams has chain restaurants. They have local restaurants, they have chain.
Franchises and things,
They
yeah.
have chain fueling. And when they put in that the Loves, is that correct? Williams thought that they were gonna get tons and tons of money.
Yeah,
But because of their low population, the tax money that is redistributed back to them is very low because of their low population.
mhm.
So they were thinking, oh, we're gonna get our roads fixed, we're gonna get lighting.
Yeah,
And they didn't get that kind of money. And then was explained to them then that it's based on population, not on tax gain in that county or in that city.
so unfair, isn't it? So every time you identify a problem like that, an issue, you want to also be simultaneously thinking, how can arts, how can artists help this issue? Is it an awareness issue? Is it an education? Does a documentary need to be made about it, but that puts artists to work? And that is playful, but communicating an urgent need that might change policy in connection to this community's issue, for example. Just going back to the WPA for a moment, it was an infrastructure initiative under President Roosevelt. There were 4 key programs under the WPA through which theatre professionals, visual artists, literary artists, and would it have been film? What was the other 4?
Architecture.
Music,
Architecture.
yeah, was it architecture? 4 key strands, disciplines of artists that were put to work. The literary artists created the most incredible narratives about communities across America, narratives that survive today, whole guides of whole states that were adopted and, you know, are still read about today. Some of them were very playful. Artists can be pretty wicked. Some of the documentaries that were created and stories and narratives that were shared were not exactly what the federal government wished to hear about, and we love that about artists. Especially if you imagine the federal government was very keen for artists to share all the great stuff about America. We're this marvelous nation, aren't we? You know, following the Great Depression. And I think that's somewhat an idea that we're looking at now, but we're 100 years on, and we're, you know, a pretty cynical society at the moment. So how do we marry, you know, all the wisdom that we have with contemporary times and how artists can be put to work? But story will be important.
I think one of the big questions that was being asked was, if we had the artist program like this in place during the pandemic, what would be different? Would we be more unified around it? I think that was a big question that was being asked from Senator.
Oh, yeah.
Well, funnily enough, the work, I mean, the Latino Foundation, Arts Foundation, that's Maria Costa, created an amazing workforce development program that put artists to work during that period. It's incredible. So you might want to look at that. In fact, we should try to draw some great projects from it as an example. We'll put a resource page on our website for you. But
Have
so,
you created any partnerships with the For Art Foundation? They're out of Chico.
so I'm so glad you mentioned this. One of the reasons that we ask you to tell us what your community resource group says, that we turn that question back to you. Do you have a community foundation that could also support projects that could really, so say you were to gain 20,000 or 100,000 for a much needed project, you know, in Colusa or regionally, would your community foundation perhaps support it? Would your Office of Education support or your school district support intergenerational learning? And could you leverage your amazing projects to gain extra funding? So we turn that back to you a little bit. And if you think there's a network that we need to know about, then let us know and we'll add it to this so that it'll prompt you later.
I have another one, that you didn't get mentioned, it's, River Partners,
Great.
and it just, they're in town, so they create wildlife habitat for the benefit
Yeah.
of people in the environment. Together with our partners, they restore rivers to rebuild critical habitat.
Yeah.
So as you're talking about local communities and the precious water, we do have river partners in town.
Fabulous.
It could be I'm not sure if they're grant funded or anything about that, but they are here right downtown.
That's really great.
I am so glad you mentioned that, and I can't even believe I didn't think of them because they are so brilliant what they've been doing. I have tracked them for a long time with salmon habitat and so much more. So they are awesome.
I had never heard of them.
So
That's
one of
interesting.
the things that we'll be suggesting to Joelle and to Sharon and the board is perhaps to have, once we've had this conversation with you, go out and have more special interest conversations. You know what I mean? Like have a conversation about water and get all the important stakeholders into the room with artists. Don't forget the artists, because they're the ones that are going to dream up this vision to share the story that you have. So these are some of the things that we're thinking about in relation to who gets what amount of money. Understanding that we have 19 counties, you know, the easiest thing for us to do would be to divvy it up and give each county 170, 180,000. But wouldn't it be more interesting and more relevant if we were to look at those really dark blue areas on your maps? And then, you know, maybe tally that with county population, county geographic size, county tribal and ethnic considerations. This is important. The cultural makeup in your community in general. What underrepresented populations haven't we even touched upon today? I know in our community, there's nothing on the map that says that we have an exploited Chinese population who were, you know, drained of resources and taught us how to mine and then slaughtered. You know, there's nothing to
Where was that?
Nevada County.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking Gold Rush Town.
Right,
Same
right.
in Marysville.
Yeah.
So
we have
they're
a Chinese population.
exactly. So how, you know, is there any relationship between the Chinese population, historically, current or present or future, around water or climate mitigation, or I don't know, or does their story simply need to be told? So be thinking about all these things. What we will be looking for is for projects that feel like they have a degree of confidence insofar that they might become case studies. They might become gold standard projects that could be taken to other communities. That if a community in North Carolina were looking at Colusa, they could pick a project around which we've created a case study and say, we could adapt that for our community. You know what I mean? We want this project to be generous. It's a pilot. We want the state to continue funding it. Let's create great case studies. So when you're thinking about projects, think, you know, 2 years from now, will this project be an incredible case study? How do we make it into an amazing case study? We're so proud of here, Colusa.
So do you want that in the wants to track markers of success or how?
We
Or like
will, we
line
will,
how we're going to?
we will. Well, I mean, having said that, I said to California Arts Council this morning, we're going to try and keep our guidelines as simple as possible, especially because we're talking rural California. And we want to be as kind as possible. We will be asked by the state to show some level of evaluation. We may well ask you, how will you know if your project was successful?
Interesting.
And at the end, we'll say, how did you do? What did you find out? Did you find out anything new that you never dreamt about? Or was this as expected? But how will you know if it's been successful? Is it because it engaged a certain population or told a certain story or created awareness around one of these critical issues? So be thinking about that. Interesting.
How about education piece? You're more to offer with education, your insights about what helps kids at school.
Well, as I'm sitting here, I was thinking about, so at our high school, Colusa High School, they have this amazing program, that's the environmental studies program. And so I believe when the program started, the idea of it was to take, students from different backgrounds who may not be able to have experiences that their children have and take them out. They took them on field trips, amazing trips all around California. And as I was sitting here, I talked to many of the students who have done that program at high school. And they have applied for scholarships that I've been involved with. And many of them say that that is their most powerful, important, best memories from high school, is going through that program. They go out and they do different things around the county, like planting native grasses, things like that. So it's really tied into environmental
I love that.
studies.
Yeah, that's fabulous, when there's that kind of sharing of wisdom that, so then you'd want naturally to involve local tribal members who hold that wisdom and culture bearers and make sure that they're the ones doing that, sharing that.
Or even I was thinking of not just at a high school level, but at elementary education.
Yeah.
Get down to elementary education. I don't feel that at our elementary schools that we engage very much with the tribal elders. I mean, when I was a kid, I grew up in Reading, so in North State, and we would have the Wintu tribe would come and do performances at our school, and we would have a whole day where we would learn from their tribe. They would do dances. I would love for my children to be able to see something like that at our local school.
We would love for them to also. That's something I've felt really passionately about and have been arguing for with the school district, for them to acknowledge California Indian Day. This is the first year they even put it on the calendar, but they don't even know it exists. Or that November is Native American Heritage Month.
Right.
That's not something the school acknowledges. I know because all three of my children went to the school district. And for those days to be acknowledged, I had to visit their classroom.
Yeah.
It does not happen in our school district. There's a huge absence.
So maybe, I mean, there are a couple of projects there, aren't there? There's the project with the kids in the school, but then there's also perhaps something that is very specific to creating awareness for our Indigenous peoples. When I began with Nevada County Arts Council, that one of my first recommendations to the board was to bring on our tribal spokesperson. And at the time, the board said, but Shelley will never have enough time. She just doesn't have enough time to give, and she's not answering her emails. She's so busy. I said, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Not the same rules don't need to apply. You know, I cannot tell you the power of having her on our board of directors, affecting everything we do. And it's also affected our relationship to how we lead and help other organizations with their land acknowledgements, and it just creates a sort of realness to everything. But so maybe there's some kind of awareness campaign that needs to be created around culture bearers and a specific tribe or tribes in
And some
general.
cultural humility blended in, because there's a lot of art feelings that go both ways there, and there's been a lot of historical trauma.
Well, this is like a really interesting project.
Yeah, I know that tribe is very standoffish with the community. They're very private, and that comes from a hurt.
Of course it does.
They've been hurt by this community a lot, and so they contribute financially, but when it comes to their culture, they're very guarded with it. In fact, Colusa, amongst Native American people, Kutchaliki is the most guarded with their culture, and if you talk to them, you'll know it's because of the hurts they experienced in Colusa.
Dating back to the
Dating back to
1800s.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
When we gave up the Redskins mascot, dating back to when I'm 50, when people near my age were going to school, things they experienced in this school district.
Is there a way that, and again, this is like classically in the listening session, where we challenge you to think up projects. Is there a way that a collection of community, social service type organizations, educators and artists, remember we want to pay artists, can come together and brainstorm what kind of harmonizing public awareness educating program could look like, led by artists that the tribe would trust?
That's interesting.
I don't know if this is the relevant model or not. I don't know the whole history of the organization, the period, the stories about Native American representation of Colusa County. We have 2 powwows each year, and they're put on by an office of the Marysville Joint School District. It's the very education office. Been around for years. They're serving, last I heard, 1,000 tribal families. And it's, it's all nations, not charity, the world next tribal affiliation that as a model, smaller community. Something like that, working through the school district and districts. We're starting at the grassroots educational level, and the woman that runs it, Pat Bennett. We've had some great things over the last couple of years, as you said, very guarded. And she now is doing student art shows and galleries, and I'm excited to be working with her. Like to show people going traditional ecological knowledge and artistic events. It's going to be really fun. But she does a ton of work. She does everything from brain tanning hides, abalone shell carving, flint napping, mat metal throwing, those are all amazing.
How does this is fabulous information. How does it land with you when you hear this? Can you see something along these lines being adapted?
No, and I love your program. It's beautiful that they do that. I know our office in Marysville contributes and participates in it. In Colusa, it's very different, and each tribe is very different. In Colusa, they do not do powwows, they're different than Colusa has what's called a big time, where they have a cultural ceremony where they do their own, they invite tribes from around and they do specific dances. It's not, they don't do fancy dance or jingle dance. It's not open to the public where there's vendors. It's a spiritual ceremony.
Yeah.
So we don't do powwows here.
So it's not like a public facing thing.
No,
I wonder if it would need to be. I mean, if it's going to be something that strengthens different tribes,
they
would it need
wouldn't.
to be?
They wouldn't, but they might share. It just, there needs to be some changes, and I believe those start in education. Like they start with telling the true story about the missions,
Right.
telling the true story about what happened in Colusa.
So there are some projects.
Right now, some funding.
Yeah.
Right now, there's no funds coming in anywhere for it. So wow, that'd be something good.
So what you're saying is that, I think what I'm hearing is that there are different stages that tribes need to go through that are organic and can't be rushed. And so something that is,
Absolutely.
right, so something that is great for one area might not work here, but might do in the future, maybe, who knows, but perhaps at least the documentation of those critical stories are going to be a starting place. So if you were writing a grant application for that, you'd want to say our longer vision is that, over time, we can, having started with communicating our stories, our histories with our people, we can then move into other areas in which we're embracing a sort of larger scale community, public facing initiative or whatever.
And I would love to see it in both the history of like the Chinese history here, the Hispanic history, because a lot of that is not told, and it's not public knowledge. Those stories aren't told.
Are there public art around
No,
these stories?
no. Notice there's not a Latino person in here.
So public art seems like it would be a great place, and we've found this in some of our most remote communities, like up in Modoc and Alturas. They love, it's like the obvious place to begin because everyone sees it.
Public art taking murals on buildings, or when
That's-
definition of it?
Okay, there is Spanish, Mexican oriented mural on the back of Davidson Drive. Then there's the picture of Natalie Rona down in our property. And the Williams Hotel has got old scene.
Yeah, it's pretty.
What it's on. So there are communities, I mean, there is some, just not a lot, but our council is working on getting more murals stuff.
Love it. So maybe that's maybe a follow-up conversation with the Arts Council and then with you and then we again bring in some artists and then maybe also have a conversation with your Latino population in the same way and the Chinese population as well, Asian American.
Worker mural that was supposed to be going, it was drawn by,
Wow.
We have a couple of.
That would be beautiful.
It's like painting.
We just don't have, our art council at this moment does not have any money that is required for doing it. So.
So maybe happened.
Yeah, so that's, we have a public art committee that, I think they are in the process of trying to do 2 different murals.
it's
They
hard
did
to find
one
the
in-
buildings,
Yeah.
because they're private buildings or we have county buildings, and they, Susie has said that the county has a lot of rules about what's on their buildings, and so.
We did do the county-wide building, down at the public library, we went to the Colusa County Public Library System, where they did, it's a visual, map of Colusa County with the agriculture, the flyway, and,
Colors of police,
Yeah.
so they,
That's awesome.
they had people, submit photos from Colusa County of different things. It could be like sunflowers were chosen, sunsets, or rice fields. And then they took those colors from people's submitted photos and they had them made into paint colors.
Oh,
they-
wow.
And they painted pillars, so our library was white. And they painted pillars that are a representation of those submitted photos. And our library looks beautiful, and as well as there's some agriculture,
aerial views.
aerial views of like the rice fields and the lines
Yeah.
that are on the side of the building.
Have it online, the visuals of that are online.
Beautiful. It's really
It feels like, it feels like story feels very important from what I'm hearing from you. It's like you want things to be more visible about the cultures that are here or that have been impacted by here or that have made a difference here or that are not seen enough. So maybe be thinking along those lines, like, and how could you engage filmmaking with that? You know, maybe you work with some filmmakers and maybe you need a writer as well to write a script for that. Keep things simple if you're not sure, like you don't have to develop a large project, but do something that's meaningful to you and create some story that you'll be proud of. Do you have like a YouTube channel?
Do I?
Not you personally, but the tribes. Is there? No. So, yeah, I more and more I'm feeling that public art is a great way to,
Yeah, that was my thought.
or documentary art of any kind, like
Right.
creative film.
Their film festival.
Yeah.
Now, years ago, I was on a committee that created a multicultural festival. It was really awesome, but we only did it 1 year because we advertised, nobody came. We had some Native American, the local tribe came and danced, which was a huge deal. They hadn't danced in town in years. And they came, they danced. We had some people from Princeton. There's a large Portuguese population there. We had a woman come and share some of her culture, we had a nice man, one of Sue's friends did origami. We did, we had some Polynesian dancers. We had a Mexican rope dancers. And it only happened one year. I'd love to see it happen again, because there's a lot of culture here, and it really isn't highlighted.
Yeah. Somebody comes along and dances in the park across from my house
Well, that's cool.
every year. I don't know. I don't, I think I'm driving. But they leave the drum, they dance.
That's,
You go over and talk to them, they say, "Hey, you know, it's
that's awesome.
The thing is, like, you really had to do something with it that would be better attendance. It's hard to keep it going. I burned out the director of the organizer.
Well, yeah, I think, at the time, we had a really good group. We had someone from the library, we had someone from Indigenous Circles United, we had the local superintendent. Someone from Fletchel, from their child care director, and then, people moved, and so it kind of fell. So I think they were really discouraged, so we didn't get very many people showing up.
Of course, and it does take a long time to build these things. In the brief time that I was working with UB Arts and Culture, David, remember that grant that you must have written that we needed to spend down, and then Abby, you produced an amazing festival,
Right.
a multicultural.
Cultural celebration.
Oh, it was gorgeous, but all these things, they take long to catch on.
They
And
take time.
They take
That's your
time, that they need to keep
need
being
to
done, like, and
Keep
not,
being done.
yeah, exactly.
I agree.
So do you have, within your community, do you have good grant writers, like people who can write grants and help these communities and?
It's
Is it you,
Sharon.
Sharon?
It's Sharon.
And Fernanda, Fernanda is actually fantastic.
Yeah,
I've been writing grants for a long time.
yeah. So that's something maybe the Arts Council can be looking at around, and maybe if there isn't a big grant writing capacity within Colusa, maybe one of the other neighboring counties, you might know someone who writes grants, and I think that's going to be really important. So it'd be great to, and again, we'll try to keep the application as simple as possible, but probably, one will want to dedicate some serious time to it. And one of the great things about writing grants is it's kind of also like planning your program. Do you know what I mean? The amount of times I've sort of simultaneously cursed the writing process, but also been incredibly grateful that it's helped sort through so many different ideas, So we kind of at the end of our time, aren't we?
Yes.
So can you tell me, like in Colusa, how much does it cost to really fund a great mural, for example, to pay the artists, to get all this stuff organized? Like, what does it cost? 3,500. Is that all?
About 35.
35.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
suppose it depends on the size, doesn't it?
Volunteerism. And.
Well, forget
The door.
Okay, well, forget volunteers. We're talking about paying the artists.
I know, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so what's your artist base like here?
That's been our roadblock, is because now all of a sudden, these guys are wanting, $7,500 an hour to paint a mural that's as big as this wall, and it's gonna take them, 25, 30 hours, and we just don't have that much money. So,
How much is that?
huh?
35, 2,250. No, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
But because you have it, right.
What I'm going to encourage you to do is to tell us how much it costs. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
don't think scarcity mode. Tell us
Yeah.
how much it's gonna
I was
cost.
gonna say, Sharon, because what the Hope for Art Foundation, their number for their program, because they do this thing, they come, they create this big mural, you decide what it is. They've done a Rosa Parks one, they've done this
Shane Brown,
MMIW. Oh, yeah, Shane.
yeah, I'm very nice.
So there's, for 1 week, if you include youth, then the youth get to help paint. The youth lead with skills. And art supplies, 35,000. That's what Hope for Art charges for that week.
Yeah.
So we need to think bigger.
Yeah, see, we can't even get one for 3,500, so.
So we're gonna think bigger.
Bring up, and then also think, what kind of other I mean, we're just talking as an example, murals, because I also want to encourage you to perhaps put down some of those stories that you're talking about for the different populations here. It would be great to have them written as well. Maybe you can employ a writer, but then think, what are you going to do with that draft that you have, or the mural that you have? What other possible programming that could connect with intergenerational learning? Maybe you have a little bit of programming that goes alongside it. David, you do tons of murals.
I'm gonna say, we've never helped. We've done probably 30-year-olds in the last 5 years, and then Katie is Sutter, and we've got these there. And talking to Shane Graham, and I didn't get enough to do something after all that work in Paradise.
So beautiful.
Today is
Yeah.
But he's, I sort of.
Who is that? Gary Gray?
Shane Graham,
Oh,
Southern California based, but he's just got a big heart.
Well, we have artists here.
Yeah.
I would like to.
When it comes to cost, they tell people we did everything from utility boxes to 80-foot walls, 120 foot. And it depends on the maturity or the experience of the artist, the complexity of the design, and the size of the wall, and the condition. Hard stucco is tough, even the spray cans. They're more finished, smooth wall. A lot of factors, but $15, $20 a square foot on the high end.
Yeah.
I've had close as high as $50 or $75 a square foot.
and it's usually per square foot, is it?
That's
Yeah.
how I've gotten to think about it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting. So maybe if indeed Colusa is deciding, we love the idea of public art, maybe have a little bit of a session before, pretty soon after the guidelines come out to talk, that will help you create the budget for that or whatever it is. Let's not forget, again, I keep saying visual art is wonderful, it's very accessible, but you in the back over there, Mr. Theatre Man, be thinking performing arts. Part of the WPA was all about creating stories and narrating them, traveling around communities, giving access to the stories that were so important to tell. So, yeah. Is it left you with lots of food for thought?
I wanted to address the mural thing.
Yeah.
We've got a building down here, just at the end of this block, that we wanted to paint a mural on for years and years. The closest we came is somebody, I think from high school, submitted a drawing that we didn't think was appropriate for that big space. I've been quoted 30,000, 35,000, have somebody come in and do. What I'd like to do is do something historic that is historically inclusive, like the train used to go down the middle of the street. We just can't afford that, but if we can get a grant to pay an artist to do that, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely.
We get the grant and go paint your building.
Whatever.
Some kind of collaboration, the money's there.
Yeah.
No one can sell art is short, but I've been amazed when we put out a statement about artists, now if you want to make it strictly local, that's certainly fine too. We've got a few based in Minnesota. And then done repeat projects for us, but statewide, I've been amazed by the incredible designs that come in. And the relatively low prices, I mean, it doesn't have to be, 5-digit budget for painting a big wall. Certainly can. And that's not essentially artists, they come in with them. They see the wall, they submit the design, and they submit their price, including, one with the scaffolding.
And then you tell them like, this is what we want, and this is what the story we want to tell.
Exactly, you put out that.
And it gives you their interpretation of what. I like that idea.
The great answer to that, David, I think it's say you have a point system of grading the applications that come in, and you give it extra point for region. So maybe something's a 90 from Southern California, maybe your guy needs to go to 92 because the extra 5 points we gave up here, and then you feel good about that.
And speaking about equipment, that's what the art council has tried on several occasions to purchase a lift to have. So we don't have to rent one, because
Yeah.
there's not a rental company in Colusa County. So we have to go out of county to get a rental company to allow us to bring it this far.
Sure.
And that costs us additional funds. So we thought it would be so much more cost efficient if we just bought it. So that, because we have banners that we put up and down the street that the city always has to do for us, and that's taking the city funds to do, something that's actually art council funded. And we would love to have artists, the banners on our brackets, have banners for local artists that they created. That was to use for Christmas, our local artists. That they do that.
Wonderful.
So, that's a real project, getting that lit.
So be challenged and keep, now is a moment to mobilize ideas. My guess is that California Arts Council is going to want Colusa projects to employ Colusa artists. That's my guess. And although if it's a regional project, definitely not within the region. I've asked Gianna to remind me to ask California Arts Council about that. I'm also going to ask California, I'm going to seek clarity on funding education as well. It's a brilliant question for them. So just keep thinking, water, energy, climate mitigation, emergency preparedness, civic engagement, social justice, community engagement, public health awareness. Keep thinking those things, apply it to everything you can. And then if there's another issue that you feel is absolutely critical, that doesn't look exactly like that or fit exactly in that box, let us know and we'll just keep having the conversation. Thank you all so much. Where are we going to take our picture?
I wasn't reading.